This is Brother Jamal coming to you on my YouTube channel here. And I had mentioned to you earlier, some time ago on my last video, that we were going to be, inshallah, conducting a series of broadcasts on the New World Order. That's what we're getting ready to go in, just to do a segment on that. But it's going to be quite a few broadcasts that we'll do, just kind of staying on the line of the New World Order, because that's kind of what we're moving into. During the time that, let me just give you a little brief background and history. During the time that John F. Kennedy was president, the New World Order was trying to put some things into effect at that particular time, and JFK did not necessarily agree with that. This was during like the early 60s. You know, JFK was president 61, 62, somewhere in that order he was president. So the things that they were trying to push at that particular time, John F. Kennedy not only he did not support it, but he refused to let them push it. After his assassination in 1963, they began to push a new ideology as far as it relates to geographics here in the U.S. They began to push a new ideology. The new ideology was limited growth. That's what they began. They were able to push it after Kennedy was assassinated. They began to push limited growth, and so that was a new ideology that they were able to put into effect and began to push that way of thinking. And limited growth, that was the whole theme of the new ideology. Once again, limited growth, which means that they would start putting certain things in perspective, certain things in order to push limited growth. You know, and that's what that new ideology was. Once again, this only came into effect after the assassination of JFK, John F. Kennedy, like around 1963. By the early 60s, they began to talk about population control. As early as 1960, they were talking about it then. But like I said, they only were able to push limited growth after the assassination of JFK. After JFK was assassinated, then they began to talk about population control. So all of this, it has to do with today's time. We may not see, or we may not get the connection, but there is a connection of then, just as it's connected to today's time. And this is one of the things that we have been trying to say and been trying to educate and promote on these videos, is that whatever we see going on today in today's time, it has a connection to history, because it had a beginning. It started, it began somewhere, and it's connected on to today's time. So that's what we see going on today's time. When they begin to talk about, let me just dive into this just for a brief moment and give you this little bit of history, because I think people need to be aware of this. Maybe they are, maybe they are, maybe aware of it, and you can Google it and see for yourself about what we're talking about. During the 1930s and 1940s and 1950s even, so many times when there was diseases, bacteria, certain things occurred in this country, in the U.S., And this is something that I read as we talk about depopulation, as we talk about limited growth. So many times in the experimentation of something, and I read this when they talk about limited growth, all of this is part of the New World Order. Whenever they would talk about experimenting something, the language was always experiment with the colored race, the Negro people, and try with them first and see how it work. See, it's still the same thing today. When they go to talk about experiment with this vaccination, you notice oftentimes they go right to the black community. This is what they do. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, what they would do during the Tuskegee experience is the best example I can give you. The Tuskegee experience, where they actually shot black men up with syphilis, gave them a disease, the syphilis. That was a serious disease back during that time, and it was an experiment. Tuskegee experience. That's what it was, experiment. That they experiment on black people, and I'm saying like what we see in today's time. You notice when they get ready to experiment something, they'll do one or two or three things. Sometime what they do, they'll get some prominent black person to be on TV and take the vaccination to try to convince the rest of the black people that it's okay. They may get some prominent black person. They may get some well-known celebrity, some well-known black person. And the third thing they might do is begin to pay some black people to get on TV or go to a certain area, a certain community in the black community, just pay people to take it, to convince people that it's okay. This is what you might see happen. And so, once again, the Tuskegee experience, these black men didn't know that they were getting shot up with syphilis. It didn't have anything to do with giving them a vaccination or giving them the shot to cure. It wasn't about curing. It was experimenting, and that's what they did. When we see, oftentimes we see genetics. When they talk about genetics and all of that, it's always experimenting with the colored race, with the Negro race, with black people. They always experiment. They always do that. And then some of us will go for the okadoke, where we allow them to pay money. We'll be paid to do something. Or you may get some celebrity, or you may get anybody from a certain walk of life to be on nationwide TV and talk about it's okay to take it, it's all right to do it, because this is part of the persuasion. It's what they do. So I just wanted to add that once again, this is a series of videos that we'll be doing on the New World Order. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please drop it in there. Let us know. We'll try to respond to it. This is just, inshallah, the beginning of a series of broadcasts that we would do on the New World Order. And just remember, when you hear the terms depopulation, you hear the terms limited growth, when you hear the sterilization, when you hear all these terms, oftentimes these terms relate to the black and brown and yellow people in the society. That's oftentimes who they are making reference to. And some of the language that I read, and as I was studying this information, they often talk about sterilization for the Negro race, for the Negro women. Once again, depopulation, and then they talk about a global crusade of depopulation. So we'll be getting into more of this, but inshallah, we wanted to bring you this first segment. Once again, this is the New World Order, depopulation / limited growth / the population control. That's what all this is about.